Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the electronics section. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, for another week of the podcast. We've got some good stuff today. We'll get into IndyCar a little bit. Got some F1 quick hitters, League of Legends, and then, of course, we'll have some Magic the Gathering at the end. But, Justin, good to see you for another week.
Yeah, good to see you too. Sorry again, a day late. We had some technical difficulties here, but nothing that's gonna sink the ship, I'd say. Good to see you, my friend, this week. How have you been?
Been doing pretty good. I'll go ahead and just start off with my Rose, Thorn, and Seed for this week. But
let's hear it.
Just for my Rose this past week, I was just thinking about it a couple of times on like my drive home and everything lately. Just being it, I appreciate Colleen a lot. Like today I got home, she had already made dinner, like surprised me, cooked it up. She just does little things like that. And just enjoying this time of being engaged and not stressing about planning and everything for the wedding and all. So it's just nice to get to enjoy that with her. And so it's just been, she's just great. So she's my Rose for this week. For my Thorn, work has just been a lot. I just have a lot of move-ins coming up and everything, and all of them need little things changed or shifted in the apartment. So I've been moving and cleaning a lot of furniture the past couple days, which is annoying, but it does what I need to. So it's just part of the job, but not the most exciting part of the job.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. And I imagine not just cleaning, you probably have to move it a bit too. It's probably going to be pretty heavy as well. So
yeah, couches and beds and things like that. It's a little bit of a pain, but making it happen. But my seed is this weekend. Colleen and I are going to take Senna. We're going to meet up with some of our friends and their dogs at a new. It's called Bark Social. It's a dog club membership. You have to get a membership or you can get a day membership or monthly memberships or whatever to take your dog there. And it's like a dog park, I guess. So I don't know. I'll let you know how it goes, but I'm looking forward to just getting Senna out with the other doggies this weekend. And I'm hoping that it goes smoothly because she is still a puppy. So
sure, but I think puppy behavior from a tiny dog is a lot easier to manage in a situation like that than a puppy behavior from a really large dog that doesn't know how much it weighs or how sharp its teeth are, these kind of things. That's actually a really interesting idea for a pay for peace of mind, it sounds like, because part of the conversation with dog parks is that sometimes people bring their dogs and they're not necessarily ready for the situation, whether it be the human or the dog isn't. So to have everybody there paying in to make sure it's a comfortable environment, I'm sure there's dog vetting involved in some way. So that's cool.
I'm still interested to see exactly how it works. We just went onto their website and got a pass for the day, sure. But it's it'll be interesting. They did ask a number of questions about her, including if our dog has an Instagram, which Colleen has made. So for Senna, yeah, I knew that would be your reaction, but it's just a nice place to have a collection of pictures of Senna. So
sure.
Yeah.
Believe me, I get it. That's interesting that they ask, though.
Oh yeah, I was like, do you have to put it? She's like, it's an optional field. But I don't know. Maybe it's a marketing ploy of if they give us the Instagram, then we can follow their dogs whatever, and then they'll
Right.
follow us back, and then we'll get more. I don't know. Maybe that's like the goal of it,
No, that's
but
good thinking. Yeah.
but yeah, definitely a little odd. But it should be a good time. I'm looking forward to getting her. She hasn't really had any play dates over the past couple weeks as she's been healing up a bit from her surgery. So
Hmm.
it'll be nice to get all the pups together.
Yeah, that sounds like a great day, and hopefully, like you said, if it's a good time, somewhere guys can go in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So
Hmm.
that's my rose thorn and seed for this week. What's been going on for you? How are you?
Dude, just a whole lot of headaches, man.
Mm,
Nothing but thorns over here.
damn.
I don't know what happened. I'm not going to go into the messy details of it, but it was a confusing emotional roller coaster. But ultimately, the lesson that we learn is patience gets you through, and there's no sense getting rammy. There's no sense getting pushy or anything. So I just did what I could each day, and and now we're here. So everything's good. But boy, am I rose here for for the day. I'm just happy as shit for the cloud. It's so easy to get your bookmarks back, to just like sign into the business website. Like it's just all right there, like almost immediately. Like I had to do a clean install of Windows, and it's like it
Whew.
is not as much of a headache as it used to be, like getting all your things back and feeling like, oh, I've got my device back. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, just big shout out to the cloud up there. Thanks for keeping my shit safe. We gotta love it. And then my seed here is there was some murmurings of a possible set Thursday night commander night where for the Michigan gang, hopefully over Spell Table, we'll be able to get some games going on a more regular basis. There was some really good positive feedback to that. So hopefully next Thursday will be the first. Will be the first of many Thursday games, which means we'll have to make sure we're able to record on time. But that's my Rose Thorn seed here for the week.
Very cool. I like to hear it. And yeah, we'll have to hopefully avoid the technical issues and everything that we've had here and there, or just we'll plan ahead a little bit more, make it happen.
But the boat is still afloat,
Oh yeah,
notably, you know. So that's worth saying.
yeah. But that your thorn having to do that with the computer, it's such a pain. It was like when I switched over or built this computer, switched out my whatever I swapped out my hard drive, and I thought that my
Hmm.
computer was like entirely gone. The fact that I was able to get it back was huge. And yeah, saving all your passwords and whatever else, since every website makes you use different things to make passwords and you can't remember any of them. That's helpful. So
Yeah, it went really well, but we've got a lot to get into here this evening. So let's start with some quick hitters for Formula One.
sounds good. So the first one, not Formula One, but I sent you this game called Unrecord, and it is this hyper realistic, like body cam first person shooter game. So it's definitely interesting because it looks like incredibly real. And it's impressive where I think video games will be able to start going in terms of like realism. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I think what's going to be interesting is the first game that like goes over some line that the public doesn't know existed before, where if it's like too real, elicits like some some unexpected, maybe like emotional response
Yeah.
to use your word, like a hyper realistic, be it maybe like film scenario or game scenario. Yeah, and especially like with VR stuff included,
Yeah.
man, it feels like, and especially watching this, just like, my Lord, like I could note my brain going back and forth between like, is this real? Like, I know you
Uh-huh.
just said I'm watching a video game movie, but like, damn. So yeah, it
Yeah.
feels like things are about to get very kooky.
Well, and like you were saying with VR, it just starts making me think of all these like different sci-fi animes and whatnot where they're wearing the headsets and like got the
Mm-hmm.
VR and they're in a different world and all. It's pretty interesting that I mean that's kind of the direction that video games and things can start to go. But on another kooky thing, so all of the AI stuff that has started cropping up lately, like Snapchat added an AI chat thing that you can ask questions and get answers from, like chat chat GPT, I think it's called, is like
Mm-hmm.
the other huge AI thing. I used it at work for a couple things that I couldn't figure out making an Excel sheet, and I'm like, asked it how to do it, and it gave me all of the codes or like the Excel formulas and different things to just be able to substitute in what I needed to.
That's sick.
But it it's interesting because there was on TikTok. I saw this on TikTok when it first got released. It just popped up on my For You page very quickly. But this person made an AI generated song featuring Drake and The Weeknd. So it's Drake's voice AI, The Weeknd's voice AI. It's blended together. It sounds like legitimately, and it's not like where I think some people would be like, oh, like a robot would probably, it would sound weird, or it would, like, you'd be able to tell. Like, this legitimately, I don't think most people would be able to tell isn't
Sure.
them. So this is something that Universal Music Group has already started to look at, and they had already asked streaming platforms to ban any AI music that was put out there. But I saw a comment that's like the SoundCloud like links are gonna be fire with just AI music and stuff like that. That will probably be created and potentially banned on like the main streaming platforms and all, like Apple Music and Spotify and all.
Dude, imagine how deep that rabbit hole is going to be, because not only will there be people making it, there's going to be people like listening to it and engaging with it.
Oh
So
yeah,
eventually there's going to be whole communities of listeners that may have never heard a, like,
oh
let's
that's
just say,
weird.
yeah, and not because the real stuff has been maybe over, like, saturated, because they're gonna go look for the robot made version of it, and
Yeah,
that's gonna be their shit. They're gonna like that it's like kind of kooky and weird, and it's got this like really slanted way that they talk or whatever. So eventually people are gonna be like, oh, do you like Drake? Which Drake? Robot Drake or real Drake?
yeah, I hadn't even thought that far. I'm just like, it's pretty crazy that AI is able to just create something like this so
Mm-hmm.
easily. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why, like, with my work and asking it, instead of what I have done in the past for years and years, is with things that I don't know how to do at work, I Google and Google again to find the information I need using the right keywords, or looking up one thing and another thing and combining them together to figure it out. And then
Mm-hmm.
now I can just say, hey, chat GPT, I don't know how to do this thing in Excel. And instead of searching what I need to in Google, opening 5 different tabs on different
Mm-hmm.
things that might potentially give me the information, I just type, hey, how do you do this? And it's like, oh, here you go in 7 easy steps. Like, it's pretty wild how quickly that's cropped up too.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the thing that we've all been waiting for with those Google searches is you just want the data just collated. You don't want to have to like you don't want to do the search. You just want it to return the answer to your question,
Right.
and now like that we have that power just at our desktops, which is fucking wild.
Well, and another interesting, like, if you want to go down the rabbit hole on that side too, it's like, is that going to kill so many websites business and so many like I saw a tweet, someone asked like a kid, I may have mentioned this on the podcast, but asked a kid like where they search for things they don't know, and they said TikTok and Chat GPT. And it's like,
Right.
if no one is using Google and just ending up on a random, like, if I'm looking for a workout, like menshealthfitness.com, like those websites, if I'm just like, hey, how do I do this properly? And like an AI chat as it progresses can just show me, like, create a video of like how to do something. All of those websites are, I don't care what Johnny Jeffries like does in the gym and him talking about his personal life story. I just want to know how to do the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to cut out so many things potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the middleman to information.
Mm.
But at the same time, there has to be humans backing up that data and creating the data for the chat GPTs to do their search and return.
That's fair. So yeah, because it does need some input to figure it out.
Sure.
But
kooky waters is what we're saying. And I think the more we're online in the next, let's say, 3 years, the more things are going to be like, was that actually Jack Nicholson?
oh yeah, big time. And
Right.
it's like, it's going to be concerning to figure out what is real and what isn't. This article that I sent you, that a German magazine published a fake interview with Michael Schumacher. They created an interview with a chatbot pretending to be Michael Schumacher and put out this interview just thinking like, oh, that's okay. We're faking an interview with someone who is world famous, has had a traumatic brain injury from a skiing accident, and has lived with his family in seclusion. Let's make a fake interview about that guy and put it out there for everyone and not tell you that it's fake until like the very end. It's just, I mean, it's crazy that anyone looked at that and said, this is okay to do, but it's wild.
It's the evolution of the tabloid, man. It's like just straight up not real.
Instead of just making up like stories based on what this person heard from that person at some party in Hollywood, like, it's now just they're literally faking interviews.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so I think that's like what you were saying with these video games and all too. It's like there are going to be lines that you quickly find out are there that you haven't crossed yet. We've been just plodding along and maybe haven't seen a line in a bit, and there's just going to be one right there in the sand, and you're going to go,
sure.
Oh, all right, that's a thing now. So
yeah, like it's all fun and Beat Saber until, one of these games puts you in a more than real scenario with a headset on, and you're gonna be like, okay, this things have changed in some important way.
We'll get there, and it's gonna be weird. Like, to imagine how realistic I used to think games were back in like 2010 compared to how far they've come now. It's just wild. But that's kind of the non-motorsports quick hitters that I had for this week. One that I wanted to touch on before getting into the IndyCar race a little bit was that Scott Dixon, who is a current driver in IndyCar, was inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America, which I think is really weird. I find it super odd to induct someone into a Hall of Fame while they're still a current like participant in whatever their thing is, whether it's a sport or music, or like you wouldn't induct like someone who is actively continuing to put out music into the Music Hall of Fame. Like you wait till they retire or are just like their career is ended and they do like little things here and there or whatever. Like you can induct Dolly Parton into the Music Hall of Fame or Country Music Hall of Fame or whatever because she's not really making music anymore. But Scott Dixon's still a driver.
Yes, but quick Google, eligibility for induction is extended to, quote, any person who has driven, piloted, owned, designed, built, supported, maintained, prepared, or promoted motorized vehicles in pursuit of speed, distance, or other records. An inductee must either be retired for at least 3 years or engaged in the top level for their area of motorsports for at least 20 years. Induction is limited to U.S. citizens or non-citizens who have recorded significant motorsports achievements in the U.S. So,
I mean, but that is okay. I appreciate
years, bro. He's been doing it.
I appreciate that, but like, there are still like Jimmy Johnson's another guy. Jimmy Johnson has been, I feel like, around for fucking forever. I feel like Jimmy Johnson was racing when I was in elementary school. I could be wrong, but...
And then also, I'm pretty sure for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, again, it is, I think, 20 years after your first release. I think is the... I just find it odd that, like, Hall of Fames are for people who have retired. Like, I wouldn't put Faker into a League of Legends Hall of Fame until he retires. And he's been playing League of Legends for, like, 10 years. He's been, like, at 10, 11 years. That's, I mean, 90% of the game has had Faker since it's been around. Yeah, and I tend to agree with you, just because traditionally that's how it's done. But being 20 years is not a light stipulation.
No,
and then
it's
also
not.
only being retired for 3 years. So maybe it is a little bit everyone. It doesn't feel exactly that. It's not like everybody's good, so just get on in here. It doesn't feel like that, but does every Hall of Fame have to be post-career induction?
I mean, I guess it depends on... it depends on...
Like, what are we losing by inducting them in while they're still current?
I think that there are people who, at least in other sports, baseball or whatnot, like those additional years can potentially like hurt your career as a whole, like whether it's people like Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa with steroids and everything, guy like Alex Rodriguez who played baseball as like a top player for years and years and years, still most likely will get into the Hall of Fame, but retires and like I'm sure has a shadow of a doubt on him because of steroid use and things like that. Like there are things that could happen if your career is still continuing, that you can't say, okay, this guy is like a person that we would like to put up and promote into this like elite thing without knowing the entirety of their career. Like, I'm not saying that Scott Dixon's gonna go and like axe murder someone or something, and then they're gonna have to like rescind his name from the Motorsport Hall of Fame. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like it's makes more sense to me, just in my brain, to look at someone's whole career and say this person's career belongs in to this Hall of Fame once you have it in its entirety and you can say, yes, this whole thing, like, it makes sense to put here.
Sure, that makes sense to me.
And it may just be a difference of opinion. It's just that's how that works in my brain. I thought it was weird when I saw it. But
if it was, to be fair, if reading the induction rules, if it was anything less than 20, I'd probably be like, I'm with you. That's weird. Okay. What the hell?
See, and
20
now
feels like a really solid number. If they're going to do that, 20 feels like we've waited a good long time here.
Yeah, like, and so I can respect that as well. Like, if someone's had like 20 years in a professional sport is a ridiculous
top
amount of
level
time.
as well. Not like, not Indy karts.
Right. And I mean, Jimmy Johnson, his first NASCAR race was in 1998. So 25 years that he's been, or at least active in motorsport. I'm not sure if there are gaps in there between when he left NASCAR and started racing IndyCar and whatnot. I'm not sure exactly, but long time. That's more than Alonso. So it goes further back.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, yeah, so then that would be, so, okay, let's liken it to something, that we're a little more familiar with. How would we react if they were like, all right, well, Alonso inducted into the Formula One Hall of Fame, and he's, like, still driving for Aston Martin?
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, his first drive was in 2001, so, I mean, that's
he'd be
22
eligible.
years. He'd be eligible. I'd still feel weird about it.
Sure.
And I don't think I'd be upset or anything. I'd still feel weird, though, because I just think of him as, like, a current driver. And, like, I know I just think of him as one of the GOATs, like, kind of up there. One of the, like, best drivers that we've had. He's a multiple-time world champion, driving competitively at 41, I think he is. So I would throw him up there into that top tier of drivers, but I would still feel like once he retires, that's when I'd be like instant pass, like day after he retires and Fernando Alonso's inducted, like that would be fine.
Okay. All right. Now we're getting like closer to the bottom of it. See, I don't see much of a difference between acknowledging pre-retirement that this guy is Hall of Fame level.
Oh yeah.
And having a ceremony. I don't see much of a difference there. Like, if you're already gonna say he's Hall of Fame material and he belongs in the conversation and we should pay deference to this guy, we should revere a career like this, I mean, you're one step away from getting him up on stage.
And for me, maybe my hang up is just due to my long like fandom of professional of like the big four professional sports like basketball, baseball, football, hockey. Those are, at least in the US, of course, football in the rest of the world, biggest sport in the world, but like in all of those sports you can't be inducted as a current player. So it might just be my own. Typically it's like 5 years after you retire, you're eligible or whatever. That's what I'm used to. So that's my own. And I think baseball and actually it's probably more than 5 years. It's probably like 10 years after for some of the sports. But yeah, that might be where my like hang up is with doing it. So
Yeah, and hey, fair enough. I mean, I'm not complaining. Just curious.
yeah, so we're getting there. This is my we're dissecting my thoughts. So,
Mm-hmm.
but getting into, we had an IndyCar race this past week. Qualifying, we had Roman Grosjean qualify P3, and then Kyle Kirkwood took his first pole position for the race at Long Beach. So, did you end up getting to watch like back much more? I know that you were. I think you caught the end, right?
Yeah, I was able to catch the end. The very um the very racy Grosjean trying to catch up to Kirkwood, and I had gone back watched the rest of the highlights afterwards. So I was able to see the race. Lots of rubbing rubber and
I
some pretty important offs.
It stresses me out how much they hit each other. Like
Mm-hmm.
I the NASCAR race that Jensen Button and Kimmy drove in was like crazy amounts of bumping, but IndyCar, those cars take abuse, man. They hit each other hard, and that those bend and do not break. So it was definitely a crazy day with some big people. Scott Dixon going out. Pato Award had a really tough race as well. So there were a number of top guys that kind of fell down the standings there.
Yeah, and some like what's weird to me is the um what's weird to me is how much the track looks just destroyed after just, a couple of laps, a couple of spins. You just see like burnouts everywhere. The
Oh yeah.
line is like super rubbered in. There's something really like gritty about it, and it has a just whole different feel where I feel like the F1 tracks, even the tracks are like very clean and neat. This,
Yeah.
not so much.
Well, and it is a street circuit, so
Hmm.
but it's also a pretty fast street circuit. Like
Hmm.
so there are a lot of places like at Monaco on there, like driving around Monaco. If you could go as fast as you can at Long Beach, I would say there probably would be a lot of similar looking tire marks on the ground and
Hmm.
everything. But I think because um, it is so fast, like, and Monaco's so slow, you don't get those opportunities to cause that kind of damage to the ground. But yeah, it does. It's very distinct. Like the spin outs and or spin offs into the runoff area and everything are leaving these just skids of tire tracks behind them. But yeah, a lot of contact, but a pretty IndyCar's interesting to me still. I don't think it's quite at the F1 level, but it's still like I enjoy watching it a lot.
Well, there's something about it in the way that they do so many laps. There's an endurance element to it. There's
Mm.
obviously this like very high speed element to it. Um, so you're getting a lot of different flavors of racing all in one format, you would say, series. Um,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the impression that I've had with it is especially the endurance element. The fact that Long Beach this was like 80 laps, I believe, on like a much longer circuit. Some of the other circuits are like 150, like 175 laps. So there's something in that that's really fascinating. I think that speaks to a driver endurance level. That is pretty impressive. So yeah, these are the kinds of things that I think about when I'm watching the race. And yeah, like F1 is they do a lot of laps too, but seeing like 175 up there, that's crazy.
Yeah, and the oval tracks are ridiculous numbers of laps.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely am in agreement there. I think the interesting, like, when you compare them side by side, like, and I said this when we were talking about super license points and all, but I definitely think IndyCar is on at least the level of F2, or should be considered on the same level in terms of super license points, because
Sure.
you do have guys that drove in F1 who are like seeing success, but they're not winning every time. Like, you would think that if an F1 driver went down into F2 and was racing, the F1 driver should beat those F2 drivers like the vast majority of the time,
Mm-hmm.
barring like incidents and things like that. But we don't see that in IndyCar. There's some really solid drivers. Kyle Kirkwood, who's a young up and coming driver, gets his first pole position, leads 53 out of the laps, and finishes P1. Grosjean had a great race as well. Goes from third, moves up to second, finishes P2, just about a second off of Kirkwood. And the other part, like you were saying with the endurance part of it, is it's so interesting watching these teams have to refuel their cars.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the whole thing at the end that I was jazzed about before they broke my heart on the broadcast was that Grosjean had like 150 seconds of push to pass left,
Mm-hmm.
when his opponents there at the end only had like 50 seconds. So I'm like, oh, he's going to cruise. He didn't have enough fuel to do more than about 30 seconds of that 150. So it's like, based on when the refuels happened and his pit stops and everything, he didn't have the extra fuel to even utilize all of that, which I was like, man,
Gotcha.
I was like, that sucks, because I guess if you use more earlier in the race, then you can just refuel a bit extra during the pit stop to make up for
Mm-hmm.
that. And so there's like a learning curve with that too. Maybe Grosjean will handle that differently in the future. But with these races being longer, like, the cars have to refuel. An F1 car would have to refuel if they were going this length in the races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also hitting a boost button, that's gonna burn way more fuel
Yeah.
to give you those, horses.
Yeah, so very it's a fun race. I remember last year there's a little quick kind of chicane, I guess, around the fountain there. And
Yeah.
there, I think Helio Castro Nieves last year ended up with his car like up stuck on top of that. It was like one of the first IndyCar races I had watched, and I remember that fountain and his car being like kind of stuck, like a couple wheels off the ground, couldn't get going.
For
'Cause,
real.
yeah, so a cool circuit. Now in the driver's standings, though, Roman Grosjean has moved up to P7. He's ahead of Colton Herta, his teammate, and then Pato Award fell out of first place, and Marcus
Mm-hmm.
Ericsson, former F1 driver, slid right up into that first position in the driver's standings.
Nice.
So yeah, some great drivers up there, some good F1 drivers that are up in the top. And so I never saw Marcus Ericsson race like during his time in F1.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have the attachment to him as I do to Grosjean, but still cool to see him performing well.
Yeah, and just some final thoughts. It's interesting the mix of age at the kind of top of the table. You have some long-standing veterans, and then some newer, younger drivers that have been given some pretty solid drives and have been putting up good results. So it's interesting to get that mix of kind of veteran and not rookie, but
Younger drivers, yeah.
younger drivers. Yeah.
And so another thing I saw comparing IndyCar and F1, someone had put up the comparison of how Charles Leclerc did against Marcus Ericsson when he first came into Williams.
Gotcha.
And so Leclerc finished up ahead of him in 13th in the driver's standings to Ericsson's 17th. So people were like, oh, IndyCar deserves a lot more respect, which I do think that they do, but it was like just the Twitter drama. And someone's like, oh, yeah, the leader in the IndyCar championship got smoked by this guy who's they called Leclerc an average F1 driver in his rookie season.
Mm-hmm.
And then posted a video of Leclerc just crashing again and again. It's like 2 minutes long of just all of Leclerc's crashes.
That's awesome.
And I was surprised. He just crashed way more than I would have thought.
Sure.
But then
I bet all the drivers have, yeah.
Yeah, I think like I have just thought, like, when I think of someone as a good driver, when they have incidents or crashes, it just like I'm just like, but they're a good driver. Like Leclerc crashing out of P1 twice last year on his own accord and everything. Like, I was just like, things happen. It is what it is. And then watching this video, it was like all these incidents when he was like really early on in his F1 career at Williams, and then a fair bit with the with Ferrari as well. But and
then when you smush them all together, it's like there's no difference between the early years and the later years. It's just like, look at this guy, he's such a shitter.
It was, but I feel like that's what people did to Grosjean too, and now he's like finishing P2 in the last race in IndyCar, and I'm like I knew he was a pretty solid driver, but he did have his fair share of incidents and everything. So it's like there's some truth to both. But that was my non-F1 quick hitters, just to round out the F1 little bits. There's a couple of things. So AlphaTauri is going to partner a little more closely with Red Bull, which I wasn't sure like how the partnership worked exactly, but they're going to be having a similar relationship to what Haas and Ferrari have, where Haas, I guess, purchases the rights to use some of their components. So Red Bull will provide AlphaTauri starting in 2024 the front wheel suspension. So they're gonna have that along with the Red Bull powertrain engine for future seasons.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so I think with Red Bull being the fastest car on the grid, being able to have that suspension ride the car lower and hopefully be able to figure out the floor and the aero with that could potentially boost AlphaTauri back up towards where I think they were hoping to be and kind of were at towards the end of the last like the turbo hybrid era before the rules changes. So
sure, it's obviously just a ploy for Red Bull to muscle in on some of that wind tunnel time that AlphaTauri has.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll sell you some springs if let's get in that wind tunnel. Come on.
Show us the data.
Yeah,
give it to us.
Exactly.
But another F1 news bit that came out. So Christian Horner, along with Stefano Domenicali, both came out talking about the 2022 budget cap. So as many as 6 teams potentially may have gone over the budget cap in 2022.
Hell yeah.
So it's going to be interesting now to see kind of now that the precedent was set with Red Bull, and now we'll get to see what all the other teams get in terms of penalties, see what happens. So that I'm sure will be taking at least till the halfway point in the season to figure out, but and have appeals and more information and whatever else submitted by the teams. But yeah, so more than half the grid might have broken the cost cap.
Bro, and more than half the grid was looking for Christian Horner's head when, news came out that they busted the cost cap and everybody's like, fuck Red Bull, they're
And
gonna win, they're fucking cheaters.
I hope to God that Red Bull is not in that list of 6. And if they're not, and 6 other teams are, when that gets announced, I'm going to call out sick from work. I'm just going to be watching the Twitter comments and fights about all of this stuff and just like bask in it. It's going to be hilarious. That'll be a great day.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. There's a pretty solid chance that Red Bull may be on that list.
Oh, so. Definitely. But I just think it's amusing. It's ironic. And in general funny. Like I think that
big time.
Red Bull obviously did go over it. They've been penalized, and like I'm just curious to see for the sport like what's going to happen, because either they have to implement higher penalties or they're going to have to change something to avoid this kind of thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
Submit your invoices weekly throughout the season.
Right. Like, don't keep them till the end.
Yeah, I don't know. They'll have to do something with it, but yeah, I'm thinking we'll probably still not hear for another 10 races or so, but
gotcha.
Yeah. So as we get new information, we'll let you guys know. But the leading up, we've got Baku coming up pretty quickly in 2 weeks now. George Russell, unfortunately, had to, it sounds like, take a new power unit. So he, I think, is on his last allotted power unit now and will potentially have to take a penalty the next time that he has to change it. So,
bro, we've got 20 races.
It's either maybe he has one more, but I think he's most of the way.
What, they last one race, dude? That's crazy.
I think they only get 3 for the season without penalties, and I think he's either on his second or third, obviously, because they changed it. So
wow.
Yeah. So concerning, they saved his electrical components, so that is something that he won't have to take a penalty yet for.
Thank God, man. Thank God we saved those electronic components.
Yeah. But then the final little F1 tidbit I had before we move along was that this is the first time ever that every team has gotten a point at the end of 3 rounds of racing. So every constructor in F1 has a point. We've got AlphaTauri and Williams got 1 each. So
wow.
Yeah. Which is
most competitive season confirmed.
Yeah. I mean, at least in the middle, like there it is. It's kind of cool to see that, and I think the new regulations, everyone, or not everyone, a lot of people criticized after last year and were concerned, but I do feel like the grid has gotten a little closer with all the different teams. There's not any team that I'm just like, oh, yeah, that's P19 and P20 every race. It's not the Schumacher, Mazepin, Haas. It's not the Latifi, Russell Williams. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I know which teams are towards the bottom, but I mean, at the same time, it's impressive that every team has been able to get a point that quickly.
Yeah, and we'll see if that trend continues. We'll see if they're able to, get any more as we continue. But yeah, it is going to be interesting to not see the same drivers at the back and maybe see like actual competition for those back slots instead of just like, this is just what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's just good for the sport in general because I think this also allows teams to better vet their drivers in a way. Like when George Russell and Nick Latifi are finishing P19 and P20 every race, the only thing that you can look at and say, George Russell is a good driver is that he like beat his teammate out every single time and then also was like close to getting points. It's like if there is this ability for all these teams to kind of be fighting consistently together around the same level, you can go, oh, this rookie driver is actually good or actually bad because they're in a car that competes with 4 other teams and they're finishing at the top or bottom every time. Like, it gives you a better idea of the driver's skill level, at least at that point in their career. Obviously, rookies and whatnot, you give a little more leeway because you're like not expecting them to beat a guy that's in a similar pace car that's had 8 more years of experience. But yeah, I think it's good for the sport as a whole. I think it's a cool stat. So,
and now you mean like just not just in the turbo hybrid era? You mean just flat?
Yeah. So this is the F1 Twitter account tweeted it out that this is the first time ever that every team has scored at least 1 point in the first 3 races. So for the entirety of F1, at least in terms of like a points championship, however far back that goes.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually very cool. Man, what a time to be alive.
What a time to be an F1 fan.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, what a time to be a League of Legends fan. And Justin, I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you probably way happier about watching League of Legends. Yumi is disabled for MSI. So she is apparently untuned and disruptive enough that they are going to not allow her to be played at MSI.
Wow. Dude, even post nerf, even when the casters were like, Yumi's gone, raise the flags, it's all over, we can come out of our homes now.
Yep.
That's hilarious.
So,
well, okay, so let's talk about fair. We know that Yumi's been like fucking wild. What are other champions that have had the same effect?
Oh,
like what's been banned from like Riot or just permabanned as far as champion because it was just agreed on like this is stupid.
I mean,
like remember when Kassadin was, just permabanned?
I would say Ryze has had points where Ryze should have been or was like Ryze was definitely 100% pick ban in like 8 world championships in a row or something. And it probably wasn't that many, but like Ryze was ridiculous, and every time they changed him and updated him, he just ended up being more broken than the previous time.
Well, that's the thing is how many reworks did he have?
Like 5 or 6.
Yeah,
like it's a lot. So I mean, there are so many champions that they've just maintained as being like super bad. They're like, well, actually, in Silver 3, Tryndamere has a 65% win rate, so we have to balance him so that he's trash at higher levels, because then Challenger players will just be abusing Tryndamere. It's like you're balancing because there's people who are like the lower half of the players of the game that are like good at this champion. It's like, I don't know. Like, so that champions like Tryndamere, Garrett, like those champions typically have not been successful in professional play. So I don't know if there's champions that I would say should just be like disabled for professional events. There are plenty of champions that essentially are because they're just like that bad. But the Yoriks of the world. He had a brief stint where he came back after his rework, but
yeah, I don't even remember what he does now. He makes like a ghoul now. He makes like a lane
Yeah.
pushing ghoul or something.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Yumi being disabled by Riot, that's crazy that they like
It's bizarre. They've
bro,
never
the problem child.
other than when there've been bugs with champions,
Right.
that like that's the only instance, like, oh, Kog'Maw is banned from this tournament because every time Blitzcrank punches him, he flies to the moon and doesn't come down for 15 seconds. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
But like this is just, oh, this champion, we haven't figured out how to balance it. So, sorry, no one gets to play it.
Well, and then it's so hated by the community that they're like, all right, you guys don't have to deal with this because we know the players will pick it if it's available.
Right. And then there are teams like, I mean, to be honest, Cloud9 played their fair bit of Yumi. Like Sven
Yep.
plays it a decent bit when in the support role and everything. So
Yep.
I mean, it will also affect that. Not that those players can't play Lulu or something instead, but it's definitely interesting.
Well, you have made me happy. That's great news. And yeah.
Yeah, but to get over to some of the League of Legends talk, we did have the LEC Spring Playoffs kicked off. So just briefly, I wanted to mention we've had one series so far. There's only it's sort of a gauntlet ish to go through, so, or a very short playoffs. But Vitality faced BDS in the first round and got 3-0'd. So Perks and Upset and Kaiser got 3-0'd by a team of much newer players in the LEC, I would say, overall.
Pretty surprising, although looking at the pick ban, having Photon on Akshan, probably not where you want to be. So that's like really weird that they're looking for
Also,
that
though,
kind of pick.
Adam playing Darius is a bizarre pick as well. The top lane was hit pretty hard. You get 4 bans to the top lane from BDS, banning out the Rumble, Gwen, Kennen, and Jace. Gwen and Rumble being banned out is crazy, but I think it's crazier that BDS was eating 4 bans at top lane and still just smoked Vitality.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. They just like, well, I'm curious if you look at Vitality's games, are they playing through Photon more? And then so it's just like I just ban that guy out, put him on his like 3rd tier champion, and then we just win that way.
I'd have
I
Yeah,
you know.
I'm not 100%, just because I haven't watched much LEC this year, but I would imagine that they should be able to say, okay, put this top laner on a normal top lane pick that isn't something weird, and try and carry through Perks or Upset, like through mid lane or bot lane. Just put him on a tank, and like top laners should be able to play tanks. It's been the meta for a long time, or a lot of different points in the history. So it would be bizarre if he would not be able to. It is also very weird to me, though, that we saw Adam pick Darius twice. The champion picks are so weird in the LEC compared to the LPL and LCK. I'm looking forward to seeing how this like adapts into MSI.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree, and we're seeing a lot of like meta champs as well. But even looking at the mid laner Nuke for BDS, like 2 games on Oriana, 1 on Cassiopeia, like I guess these mages are pretty good doing the Rod Seraphs, or I mean, even for Oriana, he went Luden's Echo, and then also Leandry's in game three. So like he's changing up the item builds, but these are just champs that you really aren't seeing on other players like that, as well as the Darius that you shouted out. So yeah, interesting to see how they're gonna match up once we get to MSI, but the score lines look good. I'm really curious what the fuck happened to Perks, man. 03, 06. That's just not what you expect to see from a Vitality game.
Yeah, I would say definitely not. I think Perks has obviously shown he's a great player over his career, but these past couple splits, he has definitely struggled more than we've seen him before. So a 3-0 for BDS. They move on. They'll be facing up against the winner of Mad and G2. So Vitality will face the winner of Mad and G2, and then BDS is waiting there in the finals for whoever makes it through that lower bracket.
Right. Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting one. The power level of LEC clearly has, I guess, leveled up. If Vitality is not the really the top dogs anymore, I'm interested to see what the last couple of rounds are gonna look like.
Yeah, and looking just at some of the bot laner stats, because Crowny, BDS's bot laner, was kind of one of the standouts in that series, but he had the highest kills per game in the LEC. He was third highest on KDA. He was pretty far up there. He was second on damage per game. So a really, I think, surprising team, just because they don't have any of the legacy kind of star players in the LEC. Sure. It's a group of young guys coming up and playing very well. So looking forward to seeing the rest of that, seeing who makes it from the LEC over into the MSI stages. And then we had the LPL finals as well with JDG and Billy Gaming.
Which, no matter how their series goes, if it is BDS that ends up making it to MSI, to use Casual's words, they're likely just going to get analed by JDG.
That is a pretty accurate statement, I would say.
Pretty fucking graphic, if you ask me.
I would agree.
JDG Billy Gaming series. It was actually pretty entertaining. You want to get into it here?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fun series to watch for me. I was really pulling for Billy Gaming the whole time. I wanted to see the underdog story. I was like, these guys are doing their thing. They don't have these star players, and they hung in a lot of they have star players, but not some of the biggest names. 369, Ruler, Knight have been some of the top players in their roles for a number of years now. I loved Billy Gaming getting bin on the Jax early on in the series. Unfortunately, in game one, I felt like they just couldn't team fight quite the way they wanted. Bin was able to get some really great opportunities, but a lot of the rest of Billy had to have stepped so far back that they weren't in position to utilize the Jack stuns that he was hitting on multiple people in team fights. So he's hitting that, everyone's pushing in, he's dying, everyone's like, oh shit, our guy's dead now, we have to back out. So it was just I think a difference in team comp that Billy wasn't able to fight as well as they would have hoped. And Ruler on the Jinx, with the range that he was getting with the rockets and everything, was super, super good. Ruler was a stud the whole series. He played super well.
Yeah, and to your point about the team fights, the game actually looked really tough for JDG after the first Rift Herald, I think it was, where they stepped up, they wanted to fight, they got bodied by BLG pretty quickly. So it looked pretty tough after that. But like you were alluding to, the triple front line for Jinx to just like stay as far back as possible, just infinite range on those rockets. They, like you said, they just weren't able to get anywhere near them. And with Yagao being really the only one that could threaten with like the long range baby cage, like even he wasn't able to get close enough.
Yeah.
Because to get in range, he would have had to walk past 369 on Kesante, Kanavi on the Vi, and kind of a frontlining Annie too with
Yeah.
the Tibbers as well. So just a really really tough spot after like 25 minutes for BLG to get onto the Jinx.
Yeah, and the longer the game went on, the more opportunities Knight had to get some nice Annie ult and use that as an engage tool for those fights. He utilized that like just really well throughout the game. So a solid game from JDG, but I was after game one, I was like, okay, Billy's right there. They're like in it. And then game two was just an absolute smackdown from JDG. They were like, "Oh, you thought you were close here. You're definitely not." Went after Yagao really really hard early on to the point where any of his ultimates later in the game onto Bin going into the team fights, he was either just too late and JDG was able to peel back enough, or just didn't have the health or the damage that he needed to get those picks. So it was a tough one on Billy Gaming's side in that second game.
Yeah, I just think to your point, like speaking about the Galio, Blitzcrank, Kindred, they just picked themselves a much harder team comp to play. And then you look over at the JDG side of things, they have like, S tier champions in every role.
Yeah.
The amount of CC available with Wukong, Ari, Rakan is just disgusting. And speaking about the Rakan, I think missing was a huge part of the success there for JDG. There was a certain part of the game where him and Kanavi were just like, they were just getting picks mid, burning a flash like in the top lane, getting just like rampant Rift Herald ward coverage, and just the amount of flashes that missing burned in that like mid game stint was just, it was too much for Billy Gaming on the re-engages then. They just had none of their tools. So it was like a really solid, like I would say like jungle support kind of showcase.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And missing on the Rakan, he played impeccably with that while avoiding the Blitzcrank hooks and anything that Billy was throwing at him. Going into game three, Billy was able to pressure early, and this is where I was a little surprised that in game one, Billy didn't take the Xayah. I expected them to because Elks had some really solid performances. He's played it a lot. Game two, Billy banned it out with JDG getting the Rakan, I guess. But I was like, okay, game three, he's on the Xayah. This is what I'm looking for. And Elk had a really, really solid game on the Xayah en route to their win.
Yeah, and it was actually a tough match for them. Like even to win, JD Gaming was, well, I would say they were kind of like even up to, I think it was like about the 20-minute mark. Teams making plays on both sides, but it ended up being the side lane plays that really kind of made it for Billy Gaming. They were able to catch Knight one time, and then he just had this really bad TP into the top side. I forget who they were ganking. They might have been getting on to like Kanavi or 369 or someone.
Yeah.
Knight TPs in to help. He just gets killed too, and now all of a sudden BLG has like Baron pressure. They're swarming JDG's red side jungle. So it was plays like this that felt really off from JDG, where they had played such a like pretty solid series up until this point. It was weird to see them making these like over forces, basically thinking they would just be able to just outhands Billy Gaming. I'm just gonna TP and we'll just grab these kills real quick. It felt very like just like miscommunication going on there.
Yeah, and I think what I would say about that is actually not as much of a knock to JDG in those instances and more to Billy Gaming, because I do think that JD Gaming is kind of they're ahead above kind of the rest of the LPL at the moment, it seems, in terms of their performances. But Billy Gaming throughout, especially this playoff run, has shown that if they get a lead, they know how to close out a game. They know how to push their lead super well. JD Gaming has just a whole roster of really solid players that don't get behind very often. So for Billy Gaming to get that advantage in even the one game and push that to a win, when if you look at the 1v1 matchups, I'd say in every role you'd probably lean at least towards the JD Gaming players being better. Billy Gaming still showed that they can, when the opportunity presents itself, if JDG or any other team makes that misstep, that they're there to capitalize on it. And so that I'm excited to see them in especially like the play-in stage, and then of course I expect them to make it into the full bracket stage at MSI, because I think they'll be able to capitalize on the teams from these other regions that aren't playing against teams at as high a level as JDG. Those opportunities to take those advantages will come more frequently, and I definitely expect them to be at the top of that play-in stage and then to qualify for the group bracket there.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, these weren't like, yeah. I think game two, like you had said, they beat up on Yagao a little bit and just kind of crowded that mid lane. Sure, you get an advantage, you win a game that way. But overall, I'm not sure this was a series where Billy Gaming like was like way out of it either. And
No,
especially you look at the series that they played against each other. I guess that was round 3. It would have been.
I think so.
Billy Gaming took JDG to all 5 games, and that was a slugfest, right? So BLG is familiar with this position, and yeah, I would agree. Yes, they were bested. I'll just say today. Yes, they were bested today, but I don't think that is going to count them out in any way against the secondary and third tier regions that they're going to be up against in the play-in stages, especially when they're able to draft champions like this. Jun looked a lot better on the Vi than he did on the Kindred. And then what did he play in game 1? Shun played the Wukong. Fair enough. These are just the champions that everybody's going to be playing. So yeah, overall, super encouraged by what Billy Gaming was able to bring to the table. I just think JD Gaming was like,
they
were on something, man.
I think looking and once we fully know all the teams and what positions they're going to be in, I would like to kind of look at maybe ranking what our expectations of teams are, but I think JD Gaming has the ability to compete with T1 and Gen.G pretty easily. I would expect them to be one of the favorites going into MSI now that we've got most of the teams locked in. We're waiting on the top from LEC and then the Vietnam, the VCS champion.
Yeah, but other than that, we have mostly the roster all decided. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a pretty exciting tournament, and we'll look forward to seeing who comes out on top.
Yeah. But I think that kind of wraps up the League of Legends talk for this week. Did you have any other notes for that?
Not for the League of Legends series. I think JD Gaming just kind of Well played to them. I do have some quick hitters here for some esports. We
Cool.
have I Am Rio going on right now. I Am Rio 2023 just finished the group stage. Really, really tight couple of days of play. I really like the format that they do, where it's like it's a couple of best of ones that have like if you lose, you get dropped down immediately into losers, and if you win, you stay up in the winners, and then they break that out into best of threes later. So I really like the format. One thing that really surprised me, we had FaZe go up against Team Vitality, and that was actually a really surprising series. I would have guessed that goes to all three games, but FaZe like actually I think FaZe fumbles. I think map one was their pick and they fumble it. Vitality takes it, and then Vitality follows up and wins their map pick.
Mm.
Um, so they just win two in a row, knocking FaZe out of the tournament. They were already not doing so hot. So that was a really fun matchup. And another interesting element that you'll notice is the schedule. This is something they were talking about on the cast because they've been pretty back to back with the the season close of ESL 17. You had the RMRs recently. You had a bunch of competition. So a lot of the players like aren't as really refined in their strategy as they may want to be. So you're
Mm.
seeing a lot more like loose play. It's like it's coming down to these actually kind of like wild little 2v2s and 1v1s where players are like kind of pushing the envelope as far as like what they normally would do in these positions. So it's kind of fun to see from that angle. You're seeing some wacky boosts, some interesting Molotov plays that you don't really see players do normally to get some like advanced positions on like T sides and stuff. So just some really interesting play. A more fast and loose kind of style going on.
Okay. That's
Hmm.
definitely something to check out. And so, what is, I guess, the big difference? Is it because they're playing the same maps that they've been playing and everything? So it's
Yeah,
like, why are these different? I don't
they're
watch
coming.
enough CS:GO to know, is this something that happens every tournament where a new meta with new positions that kind of counter old ones come in, or is it like um, still a lot of standard like boost spots and things like that that they've used previously?
You're seeing like standard boosts in like a lot of matchups, but I guess to be more specific, because they just came out of the ESL season 17 playoffs, like that finals was like 2 weekends ago.
Gotcha.
So the strategies that teams would have been using there, it's just like a stand-up hour. Like you can't go out and like just tell old jokes. So all of the strats that they would have been using to get their W's at ESL 17, and then also this the RMRs are like a points gathering tournament for whatever series they have going on. So they
Gotcha.
also played like important matches in that respect as well. So they're kind of spent from their strategies. So you're seeing a lot more default, a lot more just like random util being thrown out, as
Okay.
opposed to these like seeing hard AXX or like these like very set lurk plays where you see Rops off on he goes for the op long. You find
Where
less
they're
set
like,
plays. It's more like
oh,
true Counter Strike.
yeah, so as opposed to like teams being like, oh, this scout on my team saw this guy at this position, they're going for this strategy on this round, so we need to do XYZ. They're like,
Hmm.
they are doing random things, so we gotta try and guess at what we're reacting to and everything. So,
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
that kind of style play going on.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it's
definitely
been it's been really
different
fun to watch.
from. It's different from most of the CS:GO that I feel like I've watched. I feel like most times it is very typical, except for the occasional like one round, like, oh, this guy clutches from a weird position because he did something different. So But yeah, very cool. We'll have to keep an eye on the IEM Rio over there for CS:GO.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the playoff stages are this weekend, and so I'm guessing the finals are on Sunday at some time. They tend to keep them pretty short, and then we
Gotcha.
also have the Call of Duty Major 4 going on. Because of the Optic Major, I've been kind of tuned in. I had a lot of fun watching that. So I got to see a couple maps of that today. I was more focused on some other things, but the the maps have been really fun so far. I want to see more of the like control and search boards. But yeah, overall, just kind of looking forward to seeing some more Call of Duty. Just putting it on putting it on the radar that we've got it going on. A lot of esports going on this weekend. First person shooters.
Nice. I'll have to check that out a little bit too. I've watched a little bit of the Call of Duty League, but it'll be fun to watch the major here and see how that shakes out. Some of these guys that I've started to hear more of, or started to pay attention to more, other than just the typical like Scump, and seeing
Sure.
how he does. So
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting tournament. Looking forward to see like the best of phases. Although I think that's how the matches are set up. I'm pretty sure they're doing they have to do multi maps. So yeah, I think even in the group stage, that's how they're doing it. But
nice.
yeah, it's just gonna be good stuff. We got a little bit of Magic talk, and we still got the flavor of the week coming up. We're gonna take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be right back. We're back, and to talk a little bit about Magic the Gathering, we have March of the Machines come out for pre-release this past weekend. So game stores get X amount of product, and they can do like a Friday Night Magic pre-release. So you get 6 packs. You crack open those packs, and then you build the best 40 card deck that you can out of those packs.
How
There
many
was a
cards do
Go
you get
ahead.
in 6 packs?
I believe it's 15 cards in each pack. I
Yeah,
think
80
it's
cards
eight
and okay.
eight commons, 3 uncommons, a rare, and something else. Does that track 8, 3? What is that? 11 plus 1 is 12. I'm missing cards then. You may get 11 commons, is probably
Okay.
what it is. Yeah. Either way, so most of the decks or most of your deck is going to be commons, uncommons, but the idea is try and build like synergies, get a lot of creatures in there, and it's just a cool way to just see the new cards in action. So we were at Symbiote Collectibles. Shout out, they're an awesome game store nearby that has just provided so much fun recently, and this pre-release was one of them, and it was just a blast. There were like, dude, there must have been like 38 people there or
Oh,
something. There
that's
were
awesome.
mad heads, dude. Mad heads. Everybody just excited about Magic. You could just hear everybody was just talking about Magic. It was really cool. Go
Do
ahead.
you pay face value for the packs, or is there like a higher rate because you're getting them pre-release?
So the event's $30. So you figure packs are about $5.
Okay, so
So
it's like
six of
six
them is like
packs.
$30.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, the game stores just purely makes money selling the packs too. But I mean, that's I was curious because I'm like, there are probably some people that are just collectors of some sort that go just to these pre-release nights to get their packs and then like hope to get the best card out of those or whatever. So if you're going and doing that kind of thing, I would imagine there would be like an upcharge because you're potentially getting those cards ahead of like when most people would get their box shipped to them or whatever if you pre-order and whatnot.
Right. I think there would be individuals that are trying to take advantage of like pre-release prices, because like those prices would be inflated because nobody has them in their
Right.
hands.
So if you get that like crazy good card pull, just luckily in this thing, you sleeve that thing up real quick, and
Yeah.
then now you can throw it on whatever and sell it for probably double the price because you got it a week early.
Right. Yeah, maybe yeah, 2x would be pretty nice. I imagine local game stores don't necessarily enjoy the people coming in just picking up the packs because obviously they want to build a little community. They want,
Right.
the F&M to go off. But yeah, you can definitely do that. It was fun hearing the chitterings of people opening like powerful cards and getting to play them. So that was really fun. The set is super fucking cool. It's really fucking cool. A lot of legendaries that they're like team ups.
Okay.
So previously you had a legendary creature, it was just them on the card, but now they've like combined them. So it's like familiar faces that you know and love that are teaming up to like save the multiverse against the big bad threat. There's a new permanent type that they made for the set. So like a whole new card type that exists now in Magic. They're called battles. It's like a whole different mechanic. It's really cool, kind of cool. Not that great for Commander, but just cool in general.
Does it give you like what does it do? Does it like trigger a just like you fight to the death kind of thing?
Sort of. So you cast it when it enters the. So you cast it. It enters the battlefield on your opponent's side of the field, and it gives you an effect. It has health basically. So the idea is you have to then attack it down, lower its health bar, and then when it's at 0 health, it flips and you can cast the backside. And the backside is like a pretty valuable spell that you get.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it adds
Okay.
this whole nother layer, very similar to Planeswalkers, where you have to choose if you want to attack the Planeswalker or the player. You're gonna have to choose do you want to attack the battle or the player, but you get significant value if you do attack your battle.
So I can see why it wouldn't work well for Commander because then it's just like whoever's lucky enough to get the last hit on it gets to flip it. So you may have played the battle card, but you don't necessarily get the. I would imagine that if it's on your opponent's battlefield, then the other two people that are not that person would be able to attack it.
They can attack it, but I don't think they get to cast it if they're the ones that remove it. So the
Oh,
argument would be like they would have no incentive to help you attack the battle.
weird. I would imagine that it would be just like another card on your opponent's field that anyone can attack and get the effects of it.
Yeah, I think that would have been really interesting as a rule for multiplayer formats, and I may have to confirm to see how it actually works. But yeah, just overall, it's fun to have those in the limited set, see how much people are playing them, see what they think, what the overall response is. But here's the story that I'll tell out of pre-release.
Okay.
So my third opponent was really nice guy, says he hates pre-releases but he does them anyway. He plays Commander
That's
and
called an
Pauper.
addict.
Or maybe he was just there with his friends, who knows what the story was, but either way he was a really interesting guy. He played a red white like non-creature spell deck that utilized a new legendary. His name's Quintorius Loremaster. You get to exile things from your graveyard, make a spirit, and then you get to cast the thing that you exiled later for like 3 mana and an activation. So you can like fill up your graveyard, exile things from your graveyard to then be used later. So you get like you get to rebuy a bunch of your really important effects. This guy was playing this Quintorius and just housing me. Like the decision points around like this untapped Quintorius, seeing what's in his graveyard, seeing what my available plays are, and it's just like, oh, he just gets to stop it. like he had so many options playing out of his hand and his graveyard. I was like, whoa, this guy is sweet. I had pulled a copy of Quintorius Lore Master, so ever since being beat by this guy, I'm just like, that's my next commander.
Okay.
I've had a red white deck before. I've had it for a while, but it's just basic, just equipment, just red white. You slap, swords on a guy and have him swing, and it's really boring. And it's the same red white deck that everybody else has. But this guy, I was like, no, this is different. I can do something here. This is
Okay.
really cool. I was like inspired for the first time in a long time, and I was like, I know what I got to do. So I tore apart two commander decks, unsleeved them, got rid of my emotional attachments to it. And I was like, out of the ashes of these decks, I will build a new deck, and it shall be mine. It was just a wonderful little experience, and I'm still tinkering with it, and I'm still working on it, and so it's been a lot of fun. So I've thoroughly enjoyed March of the Machine so far. It's a very cool set.
Nice. I'm excited to hear how the Quintorius deck does in Commander, since you will be one of the first people. It's not like you can. I'm sure you could go and find a Quintorius deck online, but there's no meta Quintorius deck. So you are
Yeah, that's a
crafting
good
it
point.
on your own, and then later on, when it does become a more common commander and everything, you'll see a meta. It would be interesting to see how your initial kind of deck kind of and play style compares to what becomes like the meta for that card.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because there's a whole bunch of ways that I think you could do, and I think my deck is gonna have an affirmative non-creature core, but I'm curious how much of an equipment sub theme I'm gonna build in, because obviously I have a lot of equipment cards left over. I have some really strong equipment cards. So thinking how much of a blend you want, but seeing what other some other players build will be informative, to say the least. So that's been really fun. That's kind of my little Magic TED talk here for the week.
Nice, I dig it, and that's a cool night to get to go down to the game store, jam some Magic with some different people and everything. So
Yeah, it was great.
that's solid. And I'm still looking forward to hearing about the Pioneer tournament. We've got that in. Is that this weekend or next weekend? No, it's next weekend.
There's Yeah, the 1K is next weekend. I've got some matches on Saturday, for Pioneer. I've been working on my sideboard a little bit. I've been kind of brewing around, maybe a different main deck plan. So hopefully next episode I'll be able to talk a little bit about that in preparation for the 1K, and then hopefully I'll be able to talk a little bit about Quintorius as well. Hopefully we'll be able to jam some games.
Nice. I dig it. Looking forward to hearing about it. But we are here now at the flavor of the week for this week's episode, and
Yes,
that
we
was
are.
a terrible transition. So,
Smooth move.
so I'm just gonna block that out and get into my food for this week. But
Go for it.
last night I made or I guess it was 2 nights ago, I made steak, potatoes, and green beans. It was like very basic, very easy.
Classic.
But yeah, solid classic. Steak, I feel like it's just such an anytime kind of meal. Like in the spring, it's like, oh yeah, like that's a nice spring meal. In the winter, it's like you can make it a little more hearty with the potatoes and add some gravy and whatnot. But yeah, just a good one that we had this week. For my music, just because I am a cornball, I was listening to a bunch of Snoop Dogg on my ride home from work, since today is April 20th. So I was jamming a little bit to some Snoop Dogg and some Snoop Lion. So a little mix in there. I was listening to some of that on my way home. And then my visual medium for this week, Colleen and I picked up Babylon, which is a movie that we started on our trip to Denver. Very chaotic, and the further into the film we get, because it's 3 hours long, and it is overwhelming is probably the easiest word to describe this movie, because it's so chaotic and so like I'm still trying to put together what the like I know the plot. I know this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. I get that. But I don't necessarily see how it all ties together, and what kind of you see all of these lives of different characters and what their experiences are as they're going through this time of film and theaters and movies like becoming like booming, going from silent pictures up through new movies with sound, and like what that created, like orchestras doing movies that you could go see an orchestra on screen with the music and everything and all this stuff. You're just watching all these characters go through all these changes of the industry. But it's so chaotic, and their lives are so chaotic and intertwined and everything, that I don't know if there's more of like this. I don't know if it's like telling a story about this, or it's like just these are the chaotic lives that you would have seen going through this time period. Like it's so much going on in every single scene. There are very few scenes that are like a lull where you're like, okay, I can kind of like compose my thoughts on what just happened. It's just right into the next like craziness and mayhem. Very, very interesting movie, but we've had to parse it up into, we'll have a third viewing evening for the last hour or so of the movie.
Wild, man. 3 hours. That's an excessive amount of time. I'm kind of getting like Forrest Gump vibes. Not that that movie's crazy, but it is kind of a
That's like a decent, like he does a lot of bizarre, or is in a lot of bizarre situations throughout the story of his life that they put into this movie. And so that's
but
like,
that are trying to call back to events in history as though he actually was there.
yeah. And so
Right.
it's like a relatively similar kind of idea in terms of that in the grand scheme, but
Sure.
it is,
Where they're more meta characters, not characters.
yeah, there's like
They're trying to
multiple,
represent maybe a
yeah,
group of people or like a spirit or an
yeah,
idea.
yeah, exactly. Like
Okay,
they
that's
kind
fucking
of,
cool.
it is. And like I'm looking forward to finishing it,
Sure.
but it's like after an hour of watching it, my brain is so like jarred by just the
Right.
amount. It overwhelming is probably the best like description for it. So I'm
Interesting.
interested to finish it, and then I want to look at the Rotten Tomatoes and like the IMDb and everything to see what other people have like said or thought about it, because this is my impression thus far, and so
Gotcha.
there's still a little bit to kind of fill out that perspective on the movie.
Sure.
But yeah, so Babylon, and that rounds out my flavor of the week.
Hell yeah, man. That's a solid little lineup you got for us here. Let's see if I can add to the lineup. So my visual medium here, we finished Avatar, The Last Airbender, got through season 3, the whole thing. I have to say, better the it is even better this time around, which
Oh,
is
nice.
surprising to say. Not often do things get better as you watch them, but yeah, this was just amazing. I think there's something about the co-enjoyment that me and Sarah has, like knowing that she enjoys it so much, I think elevates it for me as well. So this watch through has been really exciting. My food here for the week, Sarah was a part of a food research study. She had to order from a couple different places around town, so a couple of the times I helped her out with that, which is definitely outside of my wheelhouse. But it was nice to get some fried goodies, for not that I don't do it often, but it was fun to kind of take that detour a little bit. And then
Okay.
my music here for the week, Kendrick Lamar released a video for one of the songs from Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, "Rich Spirit," which was one of my favorite tracks on the album. Released a video for it where he's doing some like I can't take my eyes away type dancing. I know that it is supposed to mean something, and he's doing it in a very intentional way. The video is like really, I think there's a melancholy there, and it's like hard to watch in a way that, not that it's bad, it's it is what I believe an artist hopes their music video, like it's a type of response that I bet an artist would
It
be happy. It like makes you think like, what's this shot in here for? What, like what's this mean? That kind of thing. Just a very fun way to rehear a song.
Yeah, that's cool because the album itself does have a lot of melancholy and kind of like difficult
Big time.
uh like lyrics and energies throughout it and everything. And
Hmm.
so um I can imagine that like putting that into a visual representation is definitely interesting. I'll have to check it out because I think the album itself has a lot of different components that like I don't necessarily personally can say I've experienced, but I
Hmm.
can feel what he's trying to
Yep.
do through the music. Like I can feel the energy and I can and to see that visually represented, I'm looking forward to checking that out. So I appreciate you putting that on my radar.
Oh yeah, man. PG Lang knocks it out of the park. It was super fun. But yeah, that's my flavor of the week here, sir.
Very cool. So we'll check that out. But that does bring us to the end of this week's episode of the podcast. And as always, we appreciate everyone for listening, taking the time to check it out. Of course, you can find us on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, so wherever you're hearing or seeing us. And of course, hit us up on Twitter if you want to reach out. Let us know what your flavor of the week is, your rose, thorn, and seed, at tall and short of one, the number one on Twitter.
Yeah, just to echo what Aaron said, just thank you so much. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you taking your time. But yeah, just tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. Tell them to get in on it. Super fun time. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See you next time.